pleasure to be in another country.
Absolutely.
Seeing you here. Shall we start with?
Yeah, Glenmorangie Signet.
Things
Do you want to have a dram Signet?
Please.
It's whiskey we're very proud of. It's Bill Lumsden, our whiskey creator, thinks it's one of his finest, and we were very keen on promoting it around the world. So and it's a fantastic. The key thing about it is it's got some dark roast chocolate malt at the heart of it, and that gives it a fantastic sort of Aruba coffee taste to it. But it's also got some very old whiskey in it,
Yes.
and different ages and styles. But the malt, the barley, comes from our own fields at Glenmorangie House, just below Glenmorangie House. So we put away a parcel of spirits each year straight from the fields. So it sort of roots us in our sense of place up at Tain.
Fantastic. Well, so I mean, at the moment you're working with Glenmorangie and Ardbega.
Yeah.
And so on. Where did your journey into whiskey start?
Wow, gosh, a long time ago. I mean, I was very fortunate in the sense that I was born in the Speyside region in Morayshire, born and brought up near Elgin, and whiskey was sort of part of my life from the age of 6, because I used to walk through the village, just the primary school, and there were 2 distilleries there. So every morning you smelt, the production, and I don't know whether that somehow got me going, but certainly I started rolling barrels in the warehouse at one of the famous distilleries in Craigellachie, Macallan actually, when I was a university undergraduate, and that led to obviously an interest, and then I managed to get my foot in the office door into the marketing department, and back then the marketing department of that company was 3 people, and I was the junior leg man, so that's how I started, and in those days it was a very, very small. Malt whiskey was a very small but fast-growing sector, and now of course it's much bigger. But it was great fun being in at the start or near the start of a fantastic adventure, and being a proud Scot, I'm very proud to have played a small part in it. So that's how I got started, and then I moved to what was the GCL company at that time, and worked on Hague whiskey and Dimple, and at that point started travelling. So I did a lot of representation and travel across Europe and French-speaking West Africa, because my pidgin French was deemed okay. So I used to handle those markets for Hague, and then completely sort of out of the blue, I got out of whiskey in the late 80s and went into beer. So I worked in the beer industry for 8 years, and worked in Scotland for what was called the Alloa Brewery Company, which was part of Allied Breweries at the time. That morphed into something called Carlsberg Tetley, and I was the marketing guy in Scotland for that group. And then I got an offer I couldn't refuse, which was to go to Antigua in the Caribbean and help set up a brewery.
Nice job.
So a German company in Hamburg got the opportunity to build Antigua's first brewery. So I launched the National Beer of Antigua in 1993.
Fantastic. How's that going?
It's still there. It's still being made, I think. It was great fun, but it was probably the most challenging thing I've done in life, because you're sort of, when I got there, the brewery was basically a building site. There was no beer, nothing, no customers, nothing. So you had to, I mean, literally it was from ground zero right up to the full launch in 6 months, and it was fairly hairy, but we got there.
6 months?
Yeah.
That's pretty quick.
Yeah, pretty quick. So I did that for 2.5 years, and then came back to the UK, worked for a small premium Scottish gift company called Grants d'Arvey, and one of their things was making round sporran flasks for whiskey. You put it in the front of your sporran. So I worked for Patrick Grant, who's the owner of the company, happily for 3 years up in Rossshire, near Tain, and then got the call to come back to whiskey and Glenmorangie. And so I've been with Glenmorangie since 1999, so nearly 17 years.
Gosh.
And at that time, Glenmorangie was an independent PLC, public company, and they had just bought Ardbega distillery. And part of my job was to get Ardbega going. You know, that was the main message, get Ardbega going. Because they paid quite a lot of money for it in those days. So we started from there, and I had, you know, it's been a fairly good roller coaster ride for the last 12, 15 years, but it's been great fun.
Was it difficult in those sort of, not beginning days of Ardbega, but as it was being rejuvenated, as you might say, was it difficult to decide which countries to approach first, which markets to approach first?
Yeah, in those days we were very much probably fairly UK-centric. It has to be, you know, said. We were, although Glenmorangie itself is sold across the world, it still is. Ardbega, we decided to focus on the UK market first, and to build a franchise in the UK, partly because of the ease of getting to the market, but also because you know, we wanted to have a strong sort of home base, and then at that time we also had a few very small but very prestigious independent distributors in France and Italy, and we also worked actually with a company that latterly purchased Glenmorangie, Moet Hennessy in Germany. So we had a niche network of international distributors who were sort of intuitively very much into, you know, prestige brand building.
So was that hugely boosted with Moet Hennessy coming in and their distribution?
Oh, absolutely. When they arrived, or when we arrived with them in late 2004, early 2005, that really really helped accelerate the growth of both Glenmorangie and Ardbega. It was fair to say that the McDonald family, who'd owned Glenmorangie, they felt they'd taken it as far as they could. So that's why they put it up for sale. And Moet Hennessy didn't have a whiskey company in their portfolio. So we were we are their whiskey company.
Good match.
Which is great. And given the portfolio of other brands that they have, they're fantastic. Champagnes and Hennessy cognac and lovely wines. It's a great stable to be in.
Absolutely. Yes. So from using their network, or being able to use their distribution network, how soon did sort of Eastern European countries and Poland come into the fray?
Yeah, it's to be fair, it's quite recent. Obviously, you know, when you're talking about single malt whiskey, you're talking about a batch process. You're talking about limited production, both for Ardbega and Glenmorangie to an extent. So, and also, as you know, in whiskey, you have to be able to get your forecasting right, because you're talking 10, 15 years into the future. So for the last 10 years, we've been getting much better at seeing where to put our eggs, as it were, which basket to put our eggs in. And you can't support every market in the world, so you have to choose. So obviously we chose at the beginning the big ones: United States, continental Europe, Western Europe mostly. But Eastern Europe was always on the plan to be an area of future growth. And we spend every year we spend a good deal of time thinking about where next do we want to put our eggs, which basket to put our eggs in, to invest. And it's been, you know, amazing to see I don't know where the ripple has come from, but you know, the big Western European markets, Germany, France, etc., and also the Nordics. The Nordic markets are very important, and I think there's a correlation almost between, you know, we're not too far from the Nordics, yeah. So I think that's had an effect. But it's fantastic to see this sort of big, what I would call a big spike of interest in single malt whiskey. And the key reason for it is that actually single malt whiskey has a fantastic story to tell with fantastic whiskies. There are 100 working distilleries in Scotland, and they're all, each distillery has its own story. So it's a fascinating area for spirit consumers to get into.
Where did the idea for the Ardbega embassies come from? Because Poland's had one for quite a while.
2-3 years. Bar 88. That's they're super people, and that came from the fact that Ardbega, even more so than Glenmorangie, is a very niche brand. This production is really quite small, and we've been, as we're building awareness of Ardbega since 1997 when we purchased the distillery. As I said, we started with the UK first and a couple of small distributors, but then we realised that, and the best way to in single malt, as you know very well, is to get people. You can go out and take ads in papers or be traditional in your approach, but what we liked was the idea of getting people to talk about it themselves. So Ardbega had a huge energy behind it right from the start. Because of the history of the distillery, it had been closed for many years. I mean, when we bought it in 97, it had been closed virtually since 1981. So it was a big, dark, silent place. And the revival of Ardbega became a great story in whiskey. And along the way, we as it were, galvanized the energy of whiskey fans to, as it were, gave them a mission: help us and make sure the doors of Ardbega never close again. So we formed this thing called the Ardbega Committee in 2000, and that's what was the real impetus for the sort of our whole approach, which was to give them the stories and also access to limited bottlings early on. So, and then as a direct result of that, we thought, well, we can't talk to them all around the world, because we're quite small. So why don't we get people to sort of, as it were, represent us? So we talked to lots of very good liquor stores owners in the States, and also in France and Germany and places like that. But then we thought, well, actually, the best way to do this is to get a few places where you can actually consume or try the whiskey on the premises. So Bar 88 arrived.
Fantastic.
And they've been fantastic for Ardbega in Poland. And so that sort of passionate cult following has really, really helped Ardbega get some legs here.
Have you seen the increase with the amount of sales that Ardbega has?
Yes.
Glenmorangie. I mean, with Poland increasing, I think it's last 10 years, it's increased 20% year on year.
Yeah.
And
that's phenomenal. Compounding, yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Is that visible in the?
Absolutely. No. I mean, we watch the radar very carefully, But to tell you the truth, it all comes down to the energy of a few people. So there's a few people in Poland who are interested in the development of single malt, and you can see up here. How do you pronounce it? Jestegora. Jestegora.
I'm not really saying it right myself, I'm sure.
But it basically, I mean, there's one or two people who have the energy and the interest to do it. So it's not like us as whiskey companies, we are doing the pushing.
Yes.
There's a lot of pool, and that pool of interest and energy is what we're delighted to be a part of as well.
Actually, yes, we heard that Andrei Kubik bought the bottle of Pride.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Pride?
Yeah, Pride. Yeah,
where that came from.
Pride was. I mean, as I said at the beginning, all our whiskies are quite limited, and particularly the older casks that we have in both Ardbega and Glenmorangie. There was a Pride 1981, which was a Sauterne. It was matured in bourbon barrels, and then bottled in 2010, I think it was, as a having been extra matured for a long time in Sauterne barriques.
Were the Sauterne barriques part of the same overall group?
Yeah, that's a secret. Let's say it comes from a very good Sauterne house. End of story. But and that was our first pride. And then in 2012, Bill had been, unbeknownst to us, because Bill keeps his cards very close to his chest, he'd been quietly maturing, extra maturing in 1978 Glenmorangie, which had reached it spent in a further 14 years. It was a 19 years old in bourbon casks, then it was re-wrapped into claret casks, 5 claret casks for 14 years. So it's a 34-year-old whiskey, Pride 78, bottled in 2012. And it's a very rare whiskey. There's only 700 bottles. And we spent a lot of time thinking about how to promote it. And we came up with a lovely sort of decanter-shaped bottle with a rather innovative opening closing mechanism, and took the theme of disappearing casks, because once these 5 casks are gone, that's it, you know. Yeah. And that's the fun of single malt whiskey, is that, you know, you could come to the fantastic whiskey festival up here, and people are all talking about their collections and what they've got, you know. Yeah. And that, what we're doing is tapping into that same enthusiasm. And producing rarity, which people will think about and dream about, and you know, it's all a question of saving up to buy something, and that's part of the fun of single malt, is that people are sort of talking about what they've got or what they haven't got, and if you, as you know, the last day or so here, you know, people are always reflecting on other whiskies that they've drunk.
Absolutely.
And there's a sort of what I would call a jostling for supremacy amongst the consumers. You know, well, I've got this one, but you've got that one. It's a rather fun. It's a fun way of showing off, basically. But there's a lot of knowledge up here now in Poland, and it's great. And I think those sort of rarities are great to do, because people, you know, people do appreciate very rare, beautiful malt whiskies, and what Bill did with that whiskey was that extra maturation for 14 years in these claret casks. Very, very good claret. Again, I can't tell you which one it was.
Can you say whether it was a Cabernet Sauvignon or a Merlot based claret?
Oh God.
Right, left bang.
I'll have to get back to you on that. But it basically it creates a sort of I think the headline for the taste notes, if I remember right, is something like toffee, cherries, and marzipan. It's a fantastic sort of almost fudge-like. It's really rich stuff. I'm sorry I haven't got one here to show. We'll have to make do with Signet.
Pretty good stuff.
But
I love the red wine cask that Bill did. The Campanto with the Clos de Bar and the Rasta.
Yeah. No, that was a great one.
Yeah.
I
enjoyed that.
Bill himself is a wine buff. You'd probably say, Hamish, I'm a wine expert. Well, I call him a wine buff, but he loves his wine, and he's always getting inspiration from his contacts in the wine trade, and he's very adept at sourcing very good casks. And what, generally speaking, for us, our main range for Glenmorangie, Quinta Reuben, and Nectar d'Or, and La Santa, which are the port, sherry, and Sauterne, extra matured things. What we always try and do is not overdo the extra maturation, because we want to keep the delicate elegance of Glenmorangie to the fore. But for these big vintages, you know, you go for it.
Yeah.
So Pride 78 is a fantastic example. And the good fun thing is part of the story. I mean, if you call it 5 casks, which will never be seen again.
Yes.
We partnered with an artist, Idris Khan,
Yeah.
Do you know Idris Khan? Yeah, he created an artwork called Disappearing Casks, which we used to launch the whiskey. And so he did a fantastic sort of photo. He does sort of photo. He's a photo artist, I think, and he basically took millions of pictures and built up this layered picture of these circular sweeps of chalk that he created, and that was the Disappearing Casks image. And the good fun thing was that Idris, when he met Bill, said, "You know, I was born in 1978." so he was fully into it. But it's those associations, and what you do with those casks is, yes, of course, we talk to whiskey collectors and whiskey lovers, but what you're also showing the world, the outside world, who aren't thinking about single malt all the time, is, hang on a minute, there's something fun here. So if you promote in a certain way, you will reach a new audience.
Yes.
And also, and actually, it's almost our duty as single malt people to keep promoting to the wider world, because it's still a very niche, part of whiskey, Scotch. I mean, it's only about 10% of total Scotch in the world.
Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, even here, the festival we're at the moment has only been going for 1 year.
Yeah.
And it was the first festival in Poland.
Yeah.
And it's
mushroomed. I mean,
it's amazing, isn't it?
It's more than mushroomed, it's exploded.
And the style of the festival.
Yeah, it's beautifully done, done. What I like coming up here is it's so relaxed, and of course it's beautiful weather because it's late summer and we're near the seaside. Yeah. But it's just this lovely sort of relaxed atmosphere of and being outside too.
Yes.
I think whiskey, sipping a good dram outside is a great sensory experience. Mm. One of my favourite ones, of course, is Ardbega down on the pier at the distillery, you know, on a wild day on Isla. But just being outside and having a relaxed approach, lots of good food and music, etc. It's more like I think, as you said, it's more like a music festival than a whiskey.
Yeah, it becomes a more encompassing experience beyond simply the whiskey.
Yeah.
That whole experience,
yes,
I think, really adds to the enjoyment of the whiskey, which is what it's really all about.
Yeah. And I've met quite a lot of people here who've been very nice, charming people, but they're all interested in the potential, you know. And there's a huge potential, and you can meet lots of young chaps who are setting up whiskey stores, bars, whiskey bars. I mean, when I first started whiskey was on the back of a hotel bar and there's very rarely that you got a specialist whiskey store or whiskey bar when I started in whiskey, because it was just one of the spirits that you had. Whereas now you can see a great specialism and great skill going into promoting it. And these aren't these are people who are independent enthusiasts who can see something which is A, something they're passionate about, and B, something they can make a business of.
And something that you can support as a supplier and a brand.
Absolutely. And it's great to see, not obviously we're delighted to be here, but it's great to see the rest of the Scotch whisky industry is here too. So we're all on the same adventure. Yes. And when you walk into the festival, you see everybody's got some sort of distinctiveness about the way they're talking to people. And that comes back to what I was saying earlier. There are 100 distilleries in Scotland, and each one is different. Yeah. And they all have a different story. So it's great. And the energy here is incredible. So long may it continue.
Fantastic. Hopefully we'll see you back here next year.
Well, if I'm invited back, that'd be great.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Hamish. That was enlightening and
good.
Exciting.